Well, we're very happy to be here. So my name is Bo Ji, very short name, perhaps the shortest in the world. First name is B-O, last name is J-I. I always say if you don't remember my name, you couldn't remember anyone else's name. So please do remember. I think a lot of people here are actually my LinkedIn connection. Finally, we have opportunity to see each other, including Megan, who was just speaking here. Now, very honored to be here to have Angelica Anton, and she has a very legendary story, I must say that. So, Angelica, you started to go to China during your university time. You went there with 500 pound, British pound, and now you just raised 500.
That wasn't public information.
That was not?
That was not public information.
That's not public information. We should supposed to say that, but I'm sorry for that. So now she just raised 500 million US dollars. So could you share with us a little bit about your journey from 500 pound to 500 million? You know, what was the journey that you have gone through?
Sure. So I went to China in 2012. That was 5 years ago, so another 5 in there. I had a passion for China. It was my Chinese version of the American dream, which Chinese call the China dream. And I knew that in order to do that, I had to get a better understanding of how the omnipotent organization in China, which is the Chinese government, operates. So I got a job in the Chinese government. So I think that's really the first touch point with an entrepreneurial journey, which is passion and genuine commitment. And I think that's what
entrepreneurial journey start with government. That's the first time I heard about that.
It was not about the government so much as it was about commitment and doing, and going for what you want. Mm-hmm. And I knew that the government was part of that. Mm-hmm. And I think for anyone who seeks to get into China, one of the things that the Chinese are looking for is that genuine commitment. Mm-hmm. China is not really a place for the skeptics. It's about those who really want to do something there. So after working for about a year there, yes, I was the only foreigner and I was the youngest and I was female. I think it wasn't a bad thing that I was a woman, but it was quite bad that I was so young. So sometimes I had to wear a wig and glasses. So I
want to make you look older.
So going to the second point, I think the second lesson that I've learned there and that I always tell others is that in China, more than anywhere else, business relationships always come down to people relationships. And it's just so important to invest the time to learn how to read people and understand those personal dynamics operating just beneath the surface. And for those who don't know how indirect the Chinese are, they will be told, the Chinese can tell you in a very nice way, can tell you go to hell basically in such a nice way that you will enjoy the trip going there, and then you come back as an entrepreneur and you say I got burned. I went to China and I got burned. So I think it's really important to invest time to really understand those personal dynamics and to understand how to read what is being told, what is being said. So back to the entrepreneurial journey, I came back to the UK and shortly after I learned that the Chinese president was going to make a state visit to the UK, and from my personal experience
You mean President Xi Jinping?
Xi Jinping, yes.
The current president.
The current president, and the next one as well. I knew from my basic understanding or personal understanding of China that was the moment to launch something. So that's when we came up with the idea of Silk Ventures as a cross-border, operationally focused cross-border investment platform to help companies from here, initially from Europe, to expand to China. And we knew that in order to make it big, we needed the Chinese president's endorsement and his personal support. And that's lesson number 3. You really have to start at the very top, ideally with the president, but if not with the president, at least with decision makers at the companies that you're dealing with. So I'm not saying it was easy. There were probably hundreds of companies applying to get in front of the president, and 10 were selected. Started with Hinkley Point and BP, Rolls-Royce, and a few others. Somehow we made it there, and we were one of those companies that we managed to get an approval and an endorsement from the president himself and the handshake. And that's really what marked the beginning.
I noticed that Jack Ma was there too, was it?
He was, yes.
Yeah.
That was the first time I met him, and then we had a subsequent meeting. He's a wonderful person that I admire very much.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's such a great story. You know, let's give her a round of applause. This is just an amazing journey that has went. And from there, you just share something very valuable. That is relationship. Do you find it difficult as a foreigner and from the West to try to understand Chinese and to try to really build a relationship with them? Do you find it harder than the Chinese, or even could be you find it easier?
I don't think it's more difficult or harder. It's about understanding how to take it. It's quite sensitive also. I often compare it with chemical reactions. You know, if you put a little bit more of one ingredient, the risk is that it's going to explode and you're going to get burnt. So you just have to be very careful, and you have to understand all the subtleties. And you have to understand that not everything that is being said means what is being said.
Yes, I apologize on behalf of all Chinese, because this is part of the culture.
That's what makes it all very exciting.
Yes, to be direct is very simple, right? But indirect sometimes could be very complicated. If you can enjoy that, then you're really good on that. Now, so you really, Silk Ventures, as far as I know, in May, you have closed a round of the funding of $500 million US. So can you talk a little bit about this fund? What kind of company you invest, what is your investment philosophy, etc.?
Sure, I will. But before then, I'll just quickly go through the journey that
sure.
took us
Please
there.
Do.
So since we launched, we operated as an accelerator, helping companies from here to expand to China. Having started with a very top-down approach at the central government, we were sent to municipal government level. So we went to 5, 6 different cities in China with our companies. And in each of this city, we had the support of the local mayor or local municipal government, and we help the companies to get subsidies, to get strategic investment or strategic corporate partnerships, and everything else that they needed to have a soft landing and fast expansion, fast scale-up process. So having done that for about a year, we eventually decided to set up or to focus on, to set up our headquarters in China, so to say, in Shenzhen, which is a city I cannot praise enough. It's really such an innovation powerhouse that it just doesn't get enough international PR, but I think it's really competitive at a very global level. So we established there, we partnered with an organization that not many have heard of. It's called SASAC, S-A-S-A-C, which stands for State-Owned Asset Supervision and Administration Commission. It's a long name, and it owns only about $3.5 trillion AUM.
Only.
Which is why not many people have heard of, because they don't need to do any marketing for themselves. So basically, it's the arm of the government that manages state-owned assets. We have partnered with them for the fund, and this really gives us probably an unparalleled access to this massive cash-rich SOEs, state-owned enterprises that have got the government's mandate to innovate. And here's the opportunity that Silk Ventures is tapping into, creating partnerships between startups from here and those large companies in China for fast and efficient access to the Chinese market.
That sounds really great. So you really take a top-down approach. You understood in China, do business, the government level is much more powerful than from the bottom-up approach, which I congratulate you for getting that through and really understand how business was done in China. So now share with us a little bit about your fund and how big is your fund and what kind of company you invest.
Well, you just said, really. So the partnership that we've got with the entity I've just mentioned, SASAC, is for a $500 million fund. We focused on high growth technology companies that are looking to scale up into the Chinese market, or we help them to scale up into the Chinese market, but we look for very impressive teams that at least see the Chinese market as a catalyst for their global expansion.
So if they're not interested in expanding to China, does that mean you would not be interested in investing in that company?
In a way. I mean, we really see China as part of a company being global. And if they don't see China as part of their global expansion, then we don't really see them as truly global.
So what's the size of the investment for each of the investment that you do with a particular target? Are there any limit?
Well, there are some limits, obviously, because of the nature of our fund, which is capped. Our fund, it's only 500 million, so obviously that imposes a limit. But through the nature of our partnership with SASAC, we can look at investments that are much higher than that, only that they'll be invested by SASAC and probably managed by us.
That's great. That's
but
really
generally,
fantastic.
we're looking at Series A+ and companies that are ready to scale up.
Okay, that's great. Now, so do you see that the European startups going to China? Do you see there's a market or a trend there? Do you see there's any synergy between the European and Chinese ecosystem for the startups?
Well, definitely. And as I mentioned before, that's at the very heart of our strategy. Companies from here need larger markets. For sure, and companies, the large corporations in China need to innovate, need to become more efficient, and need to compete globally. So that's really one of the most important synergies that we identified and we create and develop is those partnerships. But Bo, I think you also have some very, very exciting things to share with us through the nature of what you do. So Bo has started and is running the China Start program at the leading business school in China, which we have great respect for. I was delighted to join one of your programs as an observer and very, very impressed with what you've delivered there. So I think you're really an encyclopedia of China market entry challenges and risks, and anything else you want to share?
Yeah, first of all, our business school are often mistaken by people because our school is called CKGSB for the abbreviation. Many people think we're the Kevin Klein Business School. Now, we don't sell perfume. We're called a Chen Kong Graduate School of Business. So Chen Kong stands for our founder's company, which is Li Ka-Ching Foundation invested in our company, in our business school. So this year we celebrate 15 years of our history. And in that 15 years, you just worked for 5 years, since you went to China. But for 15 years, we have had about more than 10,000 alumni who are chairmen and CEOs of the large various Chinese companies, including some of you perhaps know Jack Ma of Alibaba, and we also have faculty now serve as Chief Strategic Officer of the world's largest fintech company called Ant Financial Services. So we have a China Star program. Thanks for joining this program. As a matter of fact, Louis, the organizer, also joined the China Star program. It's a program that really brings the European startups to China through a 5-day program where you learn how to enter Chinese market, and you also find the right partner or potential customer. Many of you here are in the fintech industry, where we'll bring the banks, we'll bring insurance company, where you can find potential initial customers, and through our network, through our large platform. And finally, to really pitch for funding. And you also experienced many participants in that program pitch to many investors. So this year is in September 11 to 15. So we will bring close to 100 investors. And these are serious investors. Many of them have invested in the unicorns before. And plus, they will be visiting lots of cool companies for that. So I'm really looking forward to have this edition. We're very excited about it.
You also lead some of the seminars as part of this program, don't you?
Yes, we have a seminar series called Win in China. So the idea is to eliminate the fear for the European companies and startups. Part of the reason is to help you to learn how really you can expand into this very exciting market space in China. So we have that, and we have 6 subjects for that.
And we were talking not long ago about, we were sharing ideas on the challenges that most startups from here experience when they expand to China.
Right.
I think you had some great ideas, and maybe you'd like to share. And
sure. A common challenges that the startups are going to China are the following. Number one is that they fear about the Chinese being a copycats. The technology, maybe you're all familiar with. And there's a quite interesting saying to say that American innovates and Chinese duplicates and then European regulates. So European is actually the worst because you regulate, you kill the idea. Chinese at least endorse the idea and they copy it and to make it better, right? So that's a common question that people ask me about.
So what's your school's policy about copying?
We actually, honestly speaking, we actually we encourage, duplication based on the legal framework. Okay, that's all I can say. We actually have a number of students. We actually have a business model. We tell our students that if you detect something that is not in America and Europe, that is already in America and Europe, but not in China, and you can bring them to China, and then you can be a billionaire in a very short period of time. So we actually have a formula to tell our students. That's why they pay lots of money to us. So I would not say we are teaching them how to copy, because we don't know the technology know-how. But we're teaching them a business model, how they can create a new, uncontested market space based on the Blue Ocean Strategy principle. But how do you deal with that? Now, I always tell the audience that, number one, you cannot stop Chinese from copying you by not going to China, right? You stay here, they will copy even more. They'll come here to copy, right? And you go there, they feel like, okay, they're here. There are many other copycats, maybe not so important for me to copy. So by staying here, not going to China, is not a safe haven, okay, number one. Number two, if you stay here, they come to copy you, you get nothing out of China. You go to China, and you can occupy the market because you know the technology. When they copy you, they're behind. So you can quickly occupy the market. You get a pretty good market leadership. You get something out of it by going there. And when these people copy you, let me tell you, the large company is not capable of copying you because there are fear about that. You can sue them. There's a lot of intellectual property lawyers in China right now from Europe. They must making money, good money. They must making good case. Otherwise, they're not going to survive, right? So those small guys is a problem because you don't want to sue 10,000 different small guys. But I always tell the audience that the small guy treats them as your marketing spending. They're eating some of your market share, but then they're promoting you, right? If you go to a market there where there's no competition, then you should fear. That means your product and nobody wants it. When there's people wants it, that means that it's great. There are people who are willing to copy my product. Thank you very much. That means I'm doing something great. Yeah. So don't worry too much. American copied the British. I mean, they even copied the street, right? The Cambridge, near the Harvard. They copied the whole street. Yeah. The British copied Chinese. Chinese had a long civilization. At that time, there's no intellectual property protection, so there's no rule for that.
I'm getting a sign there. We
Sure.
should run. But if there was one thing that we should probably wrap this up with to leave the audience with, what would be yours?
Yes, for mine, I would say that don't wait. Go to China now. And it's I mean, many people have fear. There's fear for anything. But just go there and do it and make things happen. And that's my advice to you. Many people waited for so long, always wait. I always think I'm not ready this year. I had many people who tell me about this and where they are. Some of them disappeared. So that would be my advice. What would be you? What would
I'm
you
just
say?
going to complement that and probably focus also on getting market share. Don't worry about the competition. It will always be there. There will always be copycats. Just focus on getting market share as fast as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.